My name is Msgr James Bartylla. I'm the Director of Vocations for the Diocese of Madison. I've been Vocation Director since 2004, and one of the things you do as a Vocations Director is tell your story, your vocation story, a lot. And so I'm going to do the same thing here, just tell you briefly my story, which is a little bit of an in-between story between being one of the young guys coming out of high school or college and one of the older guys, let's say in his 40s or 50s. I kind of discerned my vocation when I was 31 to 33, let's say somewhere in there. And my story is a little different in that than a young guy because I had a career. I had a career in business. I ended up in law school as well, finished law school. And so I did everything the secular world said would bring me happiness. And I got the degrees in accounting and an MBA and then a law degree, and went out and really tried to make a lot of money and do that, and perhaps with a bit more pointed focus than most people. So it was kind of my measure of success in life was kind of being successful in business. And I remember one time, well, I ended up in real estate valuation, and I had a business partner in Boston. We did very large projects around the world. My partner did the Empire State Building. I looked at Mall of America. I one time was doing a good portion of downtown Sydney, Australia with a group of consultants. We were flown over first class on around the world fairs, and I remember finishing up the assignment and making my way back around the world, and I ended up going up from Sydney up to Tokyo and then over to Singapore and back over to Frankfurt and London, I think, and then home. And I was flying in the middle of the night. It was right around Easter, and I was flying over somewhere in the Middle East, probably Turkey or Iraq. And I woke up in first class and everything was quiet, and I really thought to myself, well, here I am, I'm 30 years old or so, and I've made it. I'm kind of at the top of my game in my profession. I've made quite a bit of money for a young single guy, traveling around the world, not living that kind of regular life of most people. I was pretty full of myself, and I call that moment the fool at 30,000 feet. Because if that plane went down, I was so far from the Lord and so full of myself that the trip would have been pretty far south if I had died, I think. And I got back, and I was in New York City on a consulting assignment, and I was in Manhattan. And one Sunday morning I went up to St. Patrick's Cathedral there on like 50s on Fifth Avenue, across from Rockefeller Center in St. Patrick's, and I heard Cardinal O'Connor speak on the Catechism. It was the year the Catechism came out. And I heard him, and I just thought in the pews, there's more truth in one sentence from Cardinal O'Connor than from a whole semester of law school. Not to diminish my law professors who were very good, but it just rung true, what I had unknowingly been searching for. And for some reason that week I decided to go to confession for the first time, and I couldn't tell you how long, 5, 10 years. And I was in Manhattan doing my consulting assignment, and I kept a piece of paper with me during the week, and I wrote down all of my sins so I'd have them all cataloged as best as I could remember. And the next Saturday morning I went into St. Patrick's, walked into one of those old style confessionals with the screen, and you came in one side, the priest was in the other. And I said, "Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned. I can't remember the last time I was at confession." And he heard me pull out that paper, the crinkling of the paper, and I know now what he was thinking, which is, I think I have a live one here. One who hadn't been in confession in a while, and he's got this full list of sins. And I went through the confession, and he gave me a great penance to read the Gospel of Mark. He was rigorous. You don't read the Gospel of Mark just out there in the pew like 3 Hail Marys, but it's also the shortest of the 4 Gospels. So he had a little bit of mercy on me. And I went and bought a Bible. And to show you kind of a independent businessman's rigor, I did not stay in a hotel. I stayed in an office building on 44th and Madison. I'd sleep overnight in an office suite we had. And I'd go to the health club in the morning, take a shower, and I'd go off to the client, work the day, go back. I'd save $200 a night on a hotel room. That was the way I made some extra money when in Manhattan, saving money. So I had a sleeping bag. I was in this high-rise office building, sleeping on the floor that we had rented, and read the Gospel of Mark. And after a night or two, I thought, this is strange. I'm happier here on the floor in a sleeping bag, reading the Gospel of Mark with nothing else, than I am back in Madison, for example, in my big fancy apartment. So I got a sense something was going on. I went back to Madison eventually, finished an assignment, And I would say within 3 to 6 months, it was not that long, it was more Pauline, it was very quick in the call compared to others who maybe kind of go a little bit longer, more Petrine call as one priest called it. My Pauline call was very quick, and so I was, a friend of mine told me about Holy Redeemer, and I went over to Holy Redeemer on Johnson Street. And eventually I'd gone to Mass on some Sundays, and I finally said, I'm going to tell the priest I want to be a priest. I went from never thinking of priesthood in my whole life to suddenly realizing this is the only thing I can do. It was this call in the back of the head. So I parked on University and Lake Street. What used to be a parking lot is now the Fluno Center. I parked in that parking lot, walked down Lake Street, walked down State Street, walked down Johnson Street, went into Holy Redeemer, went to Mass thinking at the end of Mass, then Father Holmes was at the back of the church. There'll be a line, he'll greet everybody, I'll be the last in line, I'll tell him I want to be a priest. Things will go very smoothly. He gets finished with Mass, he's in the back of the church, the line goes through, I'm the last. Hello, Father Holmes, hello, Jim, and I chicken out. Big fancy businessman chickens out, telling the priest he wants to be a priest. So I walk down Johnson Street, walk down State Street, walk down Lake Street, get to my car, open the car door and think, Jim, you chicken. Go back and tell the priest you want to be a priest. I shut that car door. With great fortitude, I go down Lake Street. I go down State Street. I'm about halfway there. Sunday morning, there on the left is Taco Bell. I thought, I can't do this on an empty stomach. I'm procrastinating. So I take a hard left in the Taco Bell, go in there, get my standard 3 tacos and a Coke, sit down in one of those little 2-seaters. It's Sunday morning on State Street, and it's a Taco Bell. There's plenty of seats open. It's virtually empty in Taco Bell. And this not homeless, but down on his luck man comes in, and he orders a cup for a Coke, and he goes to the soda fountain and he fills it up. He's got this whole place to sit down, and where does he sit? At my 2-seater, a complete invasion of privacy. Right there at my 2-seater, I thought, oh, you know, State Street, there's always a cast of characters. What's this? All I want to do is sit here and think about how I have to walk down to Holy Redeemer and tell the priest I want to be a priest. What's he going to say to me? Am I going to be rejected? What's going to happen? And he starts telling me how he lost his job. And I thought, I just didn't want to deal with this. And I thought, well, you know, if I'm going to be a priest, I should be able to listen to a poor guy tell me how he lost his job. So I listened to him for a while. And finally, he finishes his story. And I kind of look at him, and he was somewhat articulate for a guy who was kind of down on his luck. And I said, you know, in that next job, maybe you should work in front of the public. And he kind of leaned over the table and he looked at me and he said, are you a priest? And I just about crumpled my hard-shelled taco in my hand. I couldn't believe it. It was one of the most profound moments in my life. And I said, no, I'm not a priest. And he kind of leaned over and looked me in the eye and goes, are you sure? Where did that come from? So we chatted a little while longer. I finished first, put my waste in the bin, put my tray up on top. I came back. He was still sitting there. I was standing, and I put my hand and I shook his hand. I said, well, good luck in finding that next job. And he looked up at me and he said, luck has nothing to do with it. Everything is the work of the Holy Spirit. Well, I walked right out of there, went right over to Holy Redeemer, and found Father Holmes. Father Holmes was very good, of course. He had been kind of lead me along the way, and I'll never regret going in the seminary in my life. Someone could pay me, they could pay me $1 million to work 20 hours a week as a lawyer, let's say, or pay me whatever it is, $30,000 a year, $40,000, whatever it is, as a priest with all the benefits. You know, it's fairly meager. I'd never go back to my old way of life. I would always choose this life of the priest because it's so full of joy.